we go.
Hello guys, look, thanks for tuning in. Hamish Patel here from Mortgages Online with Dennis and Vinny from Opus Partners. And look, I'm really lucky to have them here today because they are specialists in really showing what investment property can do for your retirement. So, and they've got a great system for going through that. So, but yeah, I mean, Vinny's going to take us through a little bit of a kind of a rundown of what he kind of would normally use as an example. So yeah, Vinny, you want to
Yeah, so I'll talk to you guys a little bit about today, sort of an average client that we would see, their situation and what they're trying to achieve out of investment property and how to actually get into investment property. So if I had a look at an average client that I would see, usually be about 45 years old, wanting to retire at 65 years old, and their lifespan's looking at about 85 to 90 years old, so let's just say best case 25 years in retirement. So let's just say that you wanted $1,500 per week, and for the sake of the example, I'll say it's inflation adjusted and it's after tax. So you get $1,500 in your hand after tax per week. So that's $78,000 a year. If you looked at it for 25 years of your retirement, it adds up to 2.24 million in total. So I'll show you some examples of how to use investment property to close what I call a retirement gap. So to close that $2.24 million so that you can retire comfortably. So I'll get into how you actually buy the property further down the track. But let's just say we're wanting to close that retirement gap and we have the ability to buy investment property. So we go buy today a $500,000 investment property and hold on to it. Then in 3 years' time, you buy a similar quality investment property for $550,000. The market's gone up, so it's worth a wee bit more. And then in 5 years' time, same thing, you buy a $600,000 property and hold on to it. Now, you're going to hold on to these from the age of 45 right through to when you're 65. And at 5% capital growth per year on average, now I was actually speaking to Hamish about this earlier, your average in New Zealand over the last 30 years, every residential property included, is 6.47% per year. So 5% is reasonably conservative. So let's say you hold on to these, you hold on to them for 20 years at 5% growth. What's going to happen is you're going to have an increase of equity of 2.25 million. Now I've chosen those numbers really nicely, obviously, so that we can close that gap of 2.24 with $100,000 left over to buy your fourth property. So now you're probably thinking, yeah, that's all very well and good, like go buy 3 properties, sounds really easy, but how can I actually afford to do this? You may not have a cash deposit. So what a lot of our clients end up actually doing is using equity in their own home, if they're comfortable to do so, to purchase an investment property. So I'll give you an example of how this would work. Let's say you have a $1 million house that you live in at the moment and you've got a $500,000 mortgage on it to the bank, so you can't use that, unfortunately. Then what you have up here is $500,000 of equity. So let's say you slice off $100,000 here and you bring it down here as a 20% deposit on a $500,000 investment property. Now I know you're probably thinking investment properties require a 35% deposit currently. Well, I'm just going to assume that this is a new build property and it's exempt from those LVR restrictions and you can get it on a 20% deposit. So that's how a lot of our clients do it instead of using cash deposits. Obviously your other option would be, if you did have cash, to put $100,000 down and then go get a $400,000 mortgage. Now, the other thing I want to touch on as well, because this is fine, this is all good, but there's obviously a few other things that go into owning a property, and one of them is making sure that you can afford to hold on to it for those 20 years. And that's where the cash flow comes into play. So, for an example, when I do a budget on a property, depending on the area, I take everything into account. So I'm going to take the mortgage into account, the rates, the insurance, vacancy, and a maintenance as well. So you're going to have to do all those things, especially over 20 years. So for an example, in Auckland, you'd be looking at about, after you'd done this, per week to hold on to an investment property in Auckland, on average, you'd be looking at about $180 to $200 per week cost to you after all expenses. Tauranga would be around 100 to 150, Hamilton around the same as that, and then Christchurch, you'd be looking at around $30 to $80 per week cost to you. Now, the reason I've mentioned those areas, Auckland, Tauranga, Hamilton and Christchurch, Wellington's obviously in there as well, is because they're your main areas. You've got your higher growth, you've got most of your population, you've got most of your jobs, it's a safer economy to invest in because there's always a bigger pool of people to sell your house to when the time comes and people to rent your house to when you need to do that. So, back to you, Hamish.
I think. Hi guys. Yeah, it's
Sorry, Hamish.
hopefully we're all on the shot now. But yeah, it's I think it's pretty good what you've put up there because a lot of people find it hard to actually kind of propagate that what's going to happen in 10, 20 years with property.
Yep.
Interesting that you should mention, of course, those figures that you mentioned. A lot of people would look at that and go, 500 grand, 550, what can I buy? But of course, there are areas in New Zealand, right, where you can buy stuff like that.
Yeah, so like I say, it's always important that you're buying in higher growth areas, higher population, and you are buying good quality properties because you want to be able to hold on to them for 20 years and get decent tenants in there that whole time.
Yep.
So in terms of $500,000, now I just use that as a nice round number, but in terms of that, you'd find plenty of good properties in Tauranga, Hamilton and Christchurch for around that price, and Wellington.
Yep.
Auckland, you could definitely...
Out of the question.
Yeah, a little bit out of the question. You could definitely find $500,000 properties in Auckland. They're probably just not going to be...
It's close to the centre.
Yeah, it's close to the CBD. They're probably not going to be as high quality, and they may not attract a high quality tenant.
If you so in terms of the weekly affordability,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
An average kind of client you might see.
Yep.
What would that look like on a weekly basis, like in terms of what kind of rent could you expect and what kind of expenses would you expect?
So let's say that I looked at a $500,000 investment property. I'll just keep it at that at the moment. And you've used equity, so you're borrowing 100%, so your interest cost is quite high. Now, we can get into that later on, Hamish.
That's 5% or something like that.
Yep, and let's just say it's at a 5%, you've got a 5% interest rate. So basically for a $500,000 property, you'd be looking at around $480 a week for your mortgage, and then around $40 for your rates, 20 for your insurance, 10 for your accounting, 10 for your maintenance, and then about 35 for your property management. What this would all come down to is around about a $650 cost.
Yep.
And then you're obviously going to get rent on that place. So let's just say you get $500 a week rent.
Yep.
So you're $150 a week short.
Yep.
Now, currently, you're able to get a tax rebate on your shortfall. Let's say you were earning 33%. You were on the 33% tax bracket in your job,
Yep.
and you bought this property and you're $150 a week short.
Yep.
That would mean you'd get a 33% rebate of your shortfall. So 33% of 150 is 50, so your contribution would be around about $100 a week. And that's,
I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's important to remember that, of course, rents go up, are subject to inflation as well. So
Yes.
your burden will become easier.
yep.
Yeah, rent always.
So-
You often see the trend as it does go up faster than what inflation does.
Yep.
So you find that your shortfall does tend to become cash flow neutral after a period of time. It's
Yep.
just that also depends on what the market's doing as well.
Yeah.
So at the moment the market's obviously, what a lot of people are seeing is it's a little bit stagnant in Auckland. So that's why for what we're looking at is always long term over short term as well, because if you're trying to do something like this short term, it is more of a financial burden, and it is probably going to cost you a lot more as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing is, it's about closing the gap, right? Your results could be better or worse, but at least if you've got a plan. I mean, how does that compare to something like KiwiSaver or Super or something?
Yeah, well, it's good. The reason I like property, like I do KiwiSaver personally myself, I have a KiwiSaver fund.
Yep.
The reason I like property though is that you're able to leverage. So you're able to put $100,000 down as an investment and then get $400,000 from the bank and have it and get a return on that 500 in total. Whereas a lot of other investments the money you put in is the money you're invested.
Yeah, because I mean, saving $2.2 million over 25 years. I mean, how much is that per week is?
It equates to about $1,600 a week. So, look, even if you are 18 years old planning to retire at 70, saving your way to retirement's basically impossible.
Unrealistic.
Unrealistic and impossible. No matter how much you're on, because the more you're on, the more you have to save the amount, so you're continually on that once you retire.
Yep.
So yeah.
I mean, there's a lot to think about when it's with retirement, and I mean, I guess the other thing is Auckland has slowed down its growth as well at the moment, you know, but some of those other areas are still ticking along a little bit, right?
Yeah. So the regions are picking up pretty good. Tauranga and Hamilton are having a pretty good time. And Auckland, like you say, Hamish has slowed down. I normally don't like to look at
The short
term, like that's what I would call noise. So, year on year things go up and down quite a bit. It's about stretching it out long term, taking a sort of 10 to 15 year approach, and then sort of planning an average on that. And it means you can just work nice and calmly. You don't have to rush in there, buy things and rush in there and sell your properties. It's more about building a long-term plan.
Being able to weather the market.
Yeah, being able to weather the market and just sticking to it. Yeah.
Cool. And so, I mean, just to finish off, really, you guys actually tailor make these plans as well for people if they're interested, right? You go through a whole actual this kind of exercise, but looking at it
personalised to someone's situation. So
in terms of the income and the equity.
Yep. Or so we'd look at the equity, possibly the cash deposit. Would actually tailor make a plan with their retirement gap and figure out how many properties you have to actually buy over the next, say, 10, 20 years to close your retirement gap. So
it is something that has to be assessed correctly to make sure that it is achievable.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to invest into a property and it's going to put you under more financial pressure.
Yeah, and I mean, it's good to know what the costs are, right, on a weekly basis, and and to be able to cope with that.
Yeah, prepare yourself for it and mentally know that's something I can actually afford every week.
Yep.
And that's the thing as well. Like when we talk about locations, if Auckland, for example, like Vinny mentioned, is a bit more expensive, and that's obviously based on 100% borrowing. If that was unaffordable for you, we would be looking at another location that was more affordable and something that you can achieve to contribute towards every week. So,
cool. Well, hey, Vinny, thanks Dennis for coming in and sharing all your thoughts and stuff.
No worries.
Thanks for coming in.
So if you guys, if any of you would like to have a free sit down with Dennis or myself, just to sort of have a discussion around your current situation and what you're trying to achieve, then your best way to go about it would be to text OPES, OPES, to 264 OPES to 268 for more information.
Right, cool.
Yeah.
And all feel free to
get in touch with Hamish.
Get in touch with us, or have a look at the website as well. I guess you've got one of those.
Yeah, always just happy to have a chat, and it's always dealing with property on a daily basis. Like yourself, always dealing with mortgages. People have questions, so we're always happy to see if we can answer them or get an answer for you at least. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks guys, and thanks for listening. And